To get started with our project, I've created a folder called blog design, and inside that folder I have a CSS folder, an image folder, and index.html. I've imported this blog design folder to our VS Code, and inside the CSS folder I have style.css, and inside the image folder I have the illustration.jpg, which is really the image that we're going to use in our website. The index.html is also empty. So to start off with, we're going to start writing our HTML so we can actually lay out this particular design, the structure of our web page, the containers with HTML. So let's get started. I'm going to start off by putting in the HTML boilerplate, which is really all the code that every website needs. So I'm going to put in exclamation point and hit tab, and you see that boilerplate code is inserted. I'm going to minimize this head, and actually not minimize it. I'm going to start off by putting the name of the blog. So I'm just going to call it blog design over here, and I'm going to import the style.css. So I'm going to say link, and it's going to be inside the CSS folder and style.css. Perfect. Now the head part is done. I'm simply going to minimize this, and now I'm going to lay out the different sections. Now remember, from our design, we first need an overall container where all of these elements are going to live. So I'm just going to call it div dot, and I'm going to say wrapper. Now a good shortcut that is included inside VS Code is if I do div dot wrapper and I hit tab, it's going to automatically put in div with the class of wrapper and just give me that particular element. So it's easier for us as developers to type in. Okay. Now with that, inside the wrapper, we have three main containers, or actually four main containers. We have the header section, we have the big image section, we have the main body section, and then we have the footer. So I'm going to create that. So I'm going to simply say header, and then inside header, or sorry, outside header, we're going to have div with an ID. Let's say if I want to put an ID, the same technique over here with class, I'm going to put the hash sign and say, let's say this is the big image, right? So I'm going to call it big image, and tab, and you see it created a div with an ID of big image. Now this is just shortcuts that are included inside VS Code, so we don't have to type all of this. All right. Now then we have the main area, and after that we have the footer area. Perfect. I'm going to save, refresh. This is our page, and actually did not open the right folder. Refresh, and our page still looks empty, but this code is probably there. Just to test it out, I'm going to put in blah 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 here, save, refresh, and yes, that this is the right page which is open. So it's a very good practice that whenever you're writing code, you constantly refresh your page so you see that actually is the page even working fine or not. All right, so that's a practice that you should always do as a developer, whether it be coding in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or any other language. Okay. Now moving on to our design, inside this particular area we have the logo information, right? So over here I'm going to create a div with, let's say, an ID of logo, and I'm going to just name the website name, which is, let's say, my blog or my awesome blog. Save, refresh, and that title is there. Now inside this big image area, I'm going to put in the image. So I'm going to simply come in over here, and I'm going to say image, and the image is inside the img folder and the illustration.jpg. Perfect. Save, refresh, and this image shows up. Now I do not want this particular image to be going out of the page, so I just want it to be 100% of its parent. So 100% of its parent is this parent, and this parent is the parent of a child of wrapper. Right, so it's basically going to be 100% of the entire page. So basically, if I want to do that, I can simply come in over here and say width is equal to 100%. And I'm going to put in the alt text of awesome graphic. All right. Save, refresh, and you see this image is 100% off. The width is 100% off the container it's in. All right. Moving on to the main section. The main section actually has two sub-containers. One is the list of blogs, and one is the sidebar. So inside main, I'm going to scroll over here. Inside the main section, I'm going to create two containers. One I'm going to call section, and the other one I'm going to call aside. And these are just default container names, which are just exactly the same as a div element. It's just they have fancy names. So when you're coding or you're working with a team, it's easier for you to, when you look at an aside, you can easily assume that this aside container or this aside element is going to be something on the side. So these are just helpful names. Although in the real practical world, these act exactly the same as a div element, which is a generic name for a container. Okay, with that, you remember from our blog design over here that I've beautifully created that it has this headline for useful links and a few useful links over here. So I'm just going to simply include that in the aside section. So in the aside section, I'm going to have, let's say, an h3 element, and I'm going to say useful links. And inside that, it has a UL with two LIs, two list items. And inside the list item, there's an anchor tag and maybe my blog name, azizali.com, and maybe a copy of this. And I'm going to just include iLoveCoding.org. And include the link. Save and refresh, and you see those links are over here as well. Okay, now moving on, let's create some content for the left-hand side, which is this stuff. So I'm basically simply going to copy all of this dummy text, and I'm going to minimize this. This is too much going on here. It's very difficult for me to read when all this code is kind of like opened up. So I usually minimize it. So inside the section, we're going to have a container for articles. So these are for blogs. This is an article, this is an article, and so forth, right? So I'm simply going to create one article for now, and I'm going to replicate it after. So article, and inside article, we need three things. We need, first of all, the title, then the buy information, and some short description. So I'm going to create that. So I'm going to just make it h2, and this is going to be the title. So I'm simply going to copy this title text. Actually, this title has to be linkable. So I'm going to actually create an anchor tag and put in the title over here. All right. Now I'm going to make it into one line. The next thing, we need the buy information. So buy information can be inside a paragraph. So I'm simply going to call it maybe a span, right? So span, and I'm going to say by Aziz Ali. So that's the name of the author. The third thing is a short description. So I'm going to just put in the short description that is over here. Simply copy this and put it over here. Save and refresh, and you see that title shows up over here as well. All right. I'm simply going to make a copy of this. So because there are a list of multiple blogs here, right? So I'm simply going to minimize this, make a copy. And that's a copy over here and a few more copies. All right. Just made that. Refresh, and you see, oops, you see over here a few of these posts show up. All right. So basically, so far, we have put in all the content that we need in the right order, right? So if you look at our code over here, I'm going to minimize all this article, so many articles. All right. So section has articles and aside has the aside information. The last thing we need is the footer information. So I'm just going to put in some text over here. I'm going to say, and copy, and my awesome blog. Save, refresh, and that information is also there. Now you see that without CSS, this is what our web page is going to look like. And we are pretty much done, or maybe almost done, or actually done with our HTML. The HTML this is all we need for this particular page. In the next video, we're going to be slowly and but surely creating one piece at a time, the CSS, and transforming this page into this beautiful looking page. All right, talk to you in the next video.